Is a cell tower going up in your neighborhood? If it's not now, it may soon. Wireless carriers are installing millions of them across the country to enable the new, faster 5G cell phone technology. But tonight, Julie Watts asked the question you're not supposed to ask. Are there legitimate health concerns?
It's keeping John Heestand up at night. This new pole outside his bedroom window where Verizon will soon install a next-generation cell tower, just feet from a school.
This would be a big tower pushing out radiation outside of our bedroom window, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for many years.
It's called a small cell or distributed antenna system, similar to this one in San Francisco. The industry says they're safe. Many in Piedmont aren't convinced.
Our daughter is a cancer survivor.
13-year-old Sophia has been one of many petitioning the city council to deny this cell tower and others.
I'm also a brain cancer survivor, and I am against the cell towers.
I mostly talked about my cancer and how it affected me.
But according to federal law, the city simply can't consider health concerns. It's outlined in this small section of the Telecommunications Act, based on science from 1996.
To turn your phone on or off.
Back when this was the height of technology. But if cities do consider health, the cell companies can sue. So with few legal arguments to deny a cell tower, they're popping up outside bedroom windows and school campuses, despite objections from across the country.
5G can be a tremendous boom to California, but only if it can be put up quickly and easily.
Hayward Assemblymember Bill Quirk co-authored legislation that would make it even harder for cities like Piedmont to object to a tower.
You wouldn't have to go through the Planning Commission, through the City Council.
The former NASA scientist says he may resurrect the bill recently vetoed by the governor.
I know scientifically that putting up these cell phone towers is safe.
But the International Association of Firefighters disagrees. They began opposing cell towers on fire stations after firefighters complained of health problems.
These firefighters developed symptoms.
Dr. Gunnar Heuser conducted a pilot study on firefighters at a station with cell towers.
And the symptoms included problem with memory, problem with intermittent confusion, problem with weakness.
Heuser says their brain scans suggest even low-level RF can cause cell damage, and he worries about more vulnerable groups like kids.
So we found abnormal brain function in all of the firefighters we examined.
So, following lobbying by firefighters, Quirk and his co-author exempted fire stations from their bill, making them one place cell companies couldn't put a tower. This is the first piece of legislation that I think anyone's aware of where somebody got an exemption because they were concerned about health. Did they tell you at all about the study?
All I know is that when the firefighters ask, I do what they ask me to do.
Because they're strong lobbyists?
Yes.
So if, say, school teachers and parents had a strong lobby and they asked you to pass something that would prevent these from going up in your schools, would you do that?
If I couldn't get the votes any other way.
Firefighter and cancer survivor Tony Stefani notes,
it's not only firefighters, it's the people that live in the general vicinity of these towers.
Current regulations don't take into account continuous low-level exposure from these small cells 24 hours a day.
More of these studies have to be done.
There are 230 scientists from 41 countries who have apparently reviewed more than 2,000 peer-reviewed studies, and they're calling on the World Health Organization to do more studies. They're not convinced that this is safe.
I think doing more studies is always a good thing.
Do you think that maybe you should consider putting a pause on legislation that speeds up these towers until there's definitive evidence that there is no harm?
We can do a lot of studies, and there are people right now, believe it or not, who are sure the world is flat.
5G mobile technology is supposed to be faster, more responsive, and make the world a more connected place. It also gives 5G companies a whole lot of power, says Zvi Meron of the technology company BATM Advanced Communications.
That whoever controls the internet or supply the whole ecosystem around the internet basically controls the world of communication.
Speaking at the Milken Institute Global Conference, Meron says with that kind of power, having Chinese 5G technology in the U.S. is a real security risk.
They put all kind of small dangerous midgets inside their equipment that can be called in time of conflicts. If there is a conflict and the Chinese will decide to paralyze your equipment, to collapse your communication system, basically they can do it. And this is the danger.
Maron says China is using mobile technology as a tool for spying, and he's seen the evidence.
They are actually using it for massive surveillance against their own population. We looked on the Huawei equipment to the level of every single chip there, and what we found is not very pleasant. This is not a commercial company stuff. This is a kind of nearly a military-grade stuff.
On the topic of Chinese technology, at another conference panel, Jiwa Teng of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference says technologies such as artificial intelligence and 5G in China are intended for the common good.
A few days ago, a group of scientists, doctors, environmental organizers, and concerned citizens got together and they called for the urgent stop to the deployment of 5G. They said that it's been proven harmful to human bodies, that this is an experiment on humanity, and that this should be called a crime under international law.
"5G is a weapon. It's used by the military. Do you know these 5G millimeter wave technologies are used to scatter crowds? They drive up in this technology when they want to scatter a cloud, and they put out these frequencies in a much higher power than 5G will be initially with us, but the same frequencies. And people scatter because they get the feeling their skin is on fire, because the human body, including the skin, is an antenna. It interacts with frequencies and it receives and transmits information. At the cutting edge of understanding of DNA, scientists know that DNA is a receiver-transmitter of information.
I have to tell people 5G story. It's bigger than the Holocaust. It's bigger than anything you've ever heard. I'm Mark Steele. Anybody who hasn't heard me. I'm a weapons systems head-up display expert. I'm one of the leading experts in the world. I've actually brought cover in relation to this, and the reason I became an expert was because I invented 5G as a killer. Do not believe a single word I say. Not one. I want you to do your own research. You'll find it's absolutely terrifying.
There are going to be boxes broadcasting 5G, this weapon, down every street, all over the world.
What we're concerned about 5G is that it's going to require a transmitter about every 3 to 10 homes. So you're talking about a small cell tower placed in front of your home.
Because at these high frequencies, you can't have...
It doesn't travel very well.
Yeah.
And people need to understand, it's 24 gigahertz to 90 gigahertz. These are not 2 feet. These are 2 inches to half an inch. And this is very dense wireless radiation hitting our bodies. What we know is that it pulses more, it's got higher frequency, more waves per second, it beats up the cells more.
Let's talk about today's technology, what we have going on today. Your phone is constantly sending electromagnetic fields in and out of each other. Whether or not you're receiving a notification right now, all of our digital tech sends this data back and forth, right, using these invisible microwave radiation signals. That's today's tech. We have every cell tower, every router constantly pulsing with radiation, whether or not you're using it. Science shows that this causes DNA damage, cancer, among other things. But don't take my word for it.
And that's just with 4G.
That's just with today's technology.
Before we get to 5G, right now you got some of it, but not that much.
Wireless radiation has biological effects, period. These effects are seen in all life forms: plants, animals, insects, microbes. In humans, we have clear evidence of cancer now. There is no question. We have evidence of DNA damage, cardiomyopathy, which is the precursor of congestive heart failure, neuropsychiatric effects. So 5G is not a conversation about whether or not these biological effects exist. They clearly do. 5G is a conversation about unsustainable healthcare expenditure.
So we are electromagnetic, electrical organisms, transmitters and receivers of information. When our electromagnetic fields are in balance and harmony, we have health. We have psychological health and we have physical health. The reason that this technological society is causing so much psychological and, quote, physical disease is because these frequencies, technologically driven, we live in this Wi-Fi world now and all the phone masts and all the rest of it, these technologically generated frequencies are scrambling the balance of the human electromagnetic electrical communication systems. And if you scramble them, you create a state of disharmony, dis-ease, which plays through to physical and mental, emotional, psychological dis-ease. And there's another point to this. The brain processes information electrically. It communicates with the cellular structure electrically, and it operates within a certain band of frequency. If you can broadcast frequencies carrying information, this technology has long been known, carrying information and perceptions within the frequency that the brain decodes information, the brain will decode those frequencies and will have those perceptions. You can influence people's perceptions externally by broadcasting these frequencies that we interact with because we are antenna. Okay. Now, some decades ago, there was a guy who worked out the frequencies of different emotional states. This is long ago. I mean, it's very, very sophisticated now. So every thought, every emotional response is a frequency. It generates a frequency, and it is of itself a frequency. Hate is a frequency, and it's different to love. You know, when you are in a room and there's lots of aggression and conflict and hatred, you feel it. What do people say? Oh God, you can cut the atmosphere with a knife in there. That is because the frequencies of hate and conflict have been so generated, they have changed the electromagnetic field of the room.
Okay, so 5G is going to be weaponized against us potentially.
Yeah, but the point being that they worked out the frequencies of various emotions, including rage and what have you. And basically, they can play across a community these frequencies without anyone knowing, and it starts to have an effect, and it starts to build rage, it starts to build anger, and people might not realize why they're feeling it, but they start to feel it. And then what they do is they trigger that with an event. Maybe some guy is attacked by the police or something, or somebody's arrested for something they didn't commit, and now there's the trigger. The blue touch paper's been lit of this manufactured frequency-driven rage, and you have mass riots and what have you, and people do things that they wouldn't normally do. And you can make people depressed. You know, the American military, they've admitted this. They have technology that fires frequencies at the enemy that basically breaks the enemy's spirit so they give up and put their weapons down. This is the technology we're dealing with. Now you take that into account and then you think of 5G. First of all, 5G doesn't travel well because of the nature of its frequency. So instead of big towers, as we have now, broadcasting these frequencies long distances, it won't do that. And it doesn't go through solid objects, what we call solid objects, very well either. So to overcome that, there are going to be boxes broadcasting 5G, this weapon, down every street, all over the world. You're talking phenomenal numbers of these boxes broadcasting, like on the lamp standard outside your children's bedroom and stuff, broadcasting this stuff. There's no way you'll be able to go where you'd be in a field of 5G. And another interesting thing, I don't know whether you've noticed this, but the story broke first of all in Sheffield, when the council started cutting down literally thousands and thousands and thousands of mature trees in urban streets. And there were big protests about it. You know, Sheffield claimed to be a green city, but all these mature trees were coming down, thousands of them. And my brother, he works as a call-out bus mechanic. So a bus will break down, they'll call him, we'll come down and fix it on the side of the road. So he's traveling all the time. And he's saying it's amazing how many mature trees are being cut down. Now, the worst nightmare of 5G in a street is mature trees, because it can't get through them. They don't want urban trees for 5G because it won't go through solid objects very well at all, and it doesn't travel far. So we're going to have this explosion of 5G transmitters, and then, going back to what I said earlier, and they've admitted this too, there's going to be like 20,000 satellites up there beaming 5G at the Earth.